Hello, and welcome to History at Night. Deep in the rainforests of Central America, there are silent cities. Colossal stone pyramids rise above the jungle canopy, their plazas and temples choked by the roots of ancient trees. For centuries, they were a forgotten world, a mystery known only to the local peoples who lived in the shadow of their sleeping stone ancestors. This was the world of the classic Maya, a civilization that at its peak was one of the most advanced on Earth. They developed the only complete writing system in the ancient Americas, created a calendar of breathtaking accuracy, and tracked the movements of the stars with a precision unmatched for 1,000 years. They were a people of divine kings, strange and brutal rituals, and magnificent art. And then, in the heart of their southern homelands, they vanished. Not overnight, but in a slow, mysterious unraveling that saw their greatest cities abandoned and their population plummet. Why? This is one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. Tonight we will journey into the world of the silent cities to investigate their fall. We will explore their golden age, and then, like archaeologists, we will examine the clues left behind in the stones and in the earth, clues that point to a perfect storm of endemic warfare, catastrophic drought, and a self-inflicted environmental disaster. But before our journey begins, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple and wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I'm also always curious to know where in the world and at what time you're joining me tonight, so I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. And now, settle in. Let the noise of the modern world fade away. Our journey takes us deep into the green heart of the jungle, to the mystery of the silent cities. For centuries, the great stone cities of the Maya slept, shrouded in the green embrace of the Central American rainforest. To the outside world, they did not exist. Vague rumors and scattered reports from Spanish missionaries or local woodsmen told of strange stone idols and vast collapsed palaces hidden deep in the jungle, but these were largely dismissed as fantasy. The prevailing wisdom of the 19th century held that no great indigenous civilization could have possibly risen in the Americas. The ruins, if they were real at all, must have been the work of Egyptians, a lost tribe of Israel, or some other foreign race. The men who would shatter this prejudice were a remarkable pair. One was John Lloyd Stevens, an American lawyer, diplomat, and celebrated travel writer with an insatiable curiosity for the forgotten corners of the world. The other was Frederick Catherwood, a British architect and artist of immense talent, gifted with a meticulous eye for detail and a steady hand. In 1839, drawn by the whispers of these lost cities, they set out on an expedition into the largely unmapped and politically volatile jungles of what is now Honduras and Guatemala. Their journey was grueling. They traveled by mule through dense, suffocatingly humid rainforest, plagued by insects, mud, and torrential rain. They found themselves in the middle of a chaotic civil war, having to negotiate safe passage with suspicious, heavily armed local generals. But they pressed on, following a local guide, until one day they arrived at a site near the Copan River in Honduras. Hacking their way through the thick undergrowth with machetes, they stumbled into a clearing, and what they saw changed the course of history. Rising from the jungle floor were magnificent stone monuments, stelae, intricately carved from top to bottom with the portraits of strange, regal kings and complex geometric symbols unlike anything they had ever seen. Catherwood, the architect, was stunned by the quality of the art, recognizing it as the work of a culture as sophisticated as that of ancient Egypt or Greece. But it was Stevens who grasped the true significance. These were not the works of a foreign people. This was the unique, powerful, and utterly forgotten legacy of an indigenous American civilization. So convinced was he of its importance, he formally purchased the entire lost city from its bewildered owner for the sum of $50. While Stevens began to document their journey in his journal, Catherwood set to his painstaking work. In the sweltering heat, his hands swollen from insect bites, he used a device called a camera lucida to project the images of the carvings onto his paper, allowing him to trace their complex details with an accuracy that had never before been possible. His stunning, evocative drawings were not romantic fantasies. They were precise, architectural and artistic records, the first true visual account of the Maya world ever seen by the public. Their journey continued, revealing one marvel after another. They explored the elegant multi-storied palace of Palenque in Mexico, its delicate stucco reliefs emerging from the jungle mist. They reached the colossal ruins of Tikal in Guatemala, where the tallest stone pyramids in the Americas rose like man-made mountains, their peaks breaking through the vast green canopy of the rainforest. When Stevens published his book, incidents of travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan, filled with Catherwood's breathtaking illustrations, it became an international sensation. It proved beyond any doubt that a great and sophisticated civilization had risen and fallen in the Americas long before the arrival of Columbus. The silent cities had been found. The world now knew that they existed, but a profound mystery had been uncovered. Who were the people who built these magnificent cities, and why had they abandoned them to the jungle? The discoveries of Stevens and Catherwood opened a window into a new and complex world, a world that had been sleeping beneath the jungle canopy for nearly 1,000 years, waiting to tell its story to anyone patient enough. What emerged from the archaeological work that followed was a picture of a civilization that for over 6 centuries, from roughly 250 to 900 AD, dominated the intellectual and artistic landscape of ancient America. This was the classic Maya. It is crucial to understand that the Maya were not a single unified empire ruled from one great capital. Their world was a dynamic and often volatile network of dozens of independent city-states, each controlling its own territory and vying for influence. Great cities like Tikal and Palenque, Copan and the mighty serpent kingdom of Calakmul were rivals. Their history, which we can now read from their stone monuments, is one of constantly shifting alliances, strategic royal marriages, and intense ritualized warfare. The foundation of this entire civilization, the substance that built the Great Pyramids and fueled its complex society, was a single plant, maize, or corn. The Maya were the people of the corn. It was not just their primary food source, it was the very center of their religion and their identity. Their entire existence was a partnership with this vital crop, a difficult challenge in the thin soil and unpredictable rainfall of a tropical rainforest environment. They developed ingenious agricultural techniques to survive, from slash-and-burn farming in small jungle plots to building elaborate terraces on hillsides, to creating raised, irrigated fields in the swamps. The cycle of planting, growth, and harvest was not just a task, it was the central sacred drama of their lives. At the heart of this sacred drama stood the king, the Kul Ajau, or Holy Lord. The Maya king was not simply a political ruler or a general. He was a divine shaman, the chief intermediary between the mortal world of his subjects and the supernatural realm of the gods and royal ancestors. His primary duty was not to govern, but to perform the sacred rituals that maintained the order of the cosmos, ensured the sun would rise each day, and, most critically, brought the seasonal rains that allowed the maize to grow. To fulfill this sacred duty, the king's most potent offering was his own blood. In deeply important ceremonies, the Ajau would perform a ritual of bloodletting. Using a terrifyingly sharp obsidian lancet, a stingray spine, or a sharpened piece of bone, he would pierce his own tongue, earlobes, or other parts of his body, allowing his blood to fall onto strips of paper held in a bowl. This paper was then burned, and in the swirling smoke it was believed that a portal would open, a vision serpent, through which the king could communicate with the gods and ancestors to petition them for the survival of his people. This was the great cosmic bargain at the heart of Maya civilization. The people fed the king with tribute from their cornfields. The king, in turn, fed the gods with his own sacred blood. As long as this bargain held, the universe was in balance, the cities flourished, and the maize would grow. It was a powerful and deeply ingrained system of belief, but it rested on a fragile and dangerous promise that the king's piety could control the sky itself. At its height, around the year 750 AD, the world of the classic Maya must have seemed eternal. The great city-states of the southern lowlands were thriving. Tikal, with its towering temple pyramids, was a bustling metropolis. The kings of Calakmul, the mighty serpent kingdom, controlled a vast network of vassals. At Copan, artisans were carving some of the most complex and beautiful monuments in the ancient Americas. The population was at its peak, the traditions were strong, and the intricate gears of the sacred calendar seemed to promise a predictable and divinely ordered future. Imagine, if you will, the city of Tikal at the height of its power. You were standing in the Great Plaza. Around you, towering above the jungle canopy, are two massive temple pyramids, Temple 1 to the east and Temple 2 to the west, each rising over 45 meters into the tropical sky. The plaza is vast, paved with smooth white limestone that reflects the brilliant sun. On this day, it is filled with thousands of people. There are farmers from the surrounding countryside who have come to pay tribute to the king. There are merchants from distant cities, their packs filled with jade, obsidian, cacao, and brilliantly colored quetzal feathers. There are warriors, their bodies painted, carrying shields emblazoned with the jaguar symbol of Tikal's royal dynasty. And there are priests in elaborate headdresses and jade jewelry, preparing for a sacred ceremony. At the heart of this sacred drama stood the king, the Kul Ajau of Tikal. He is dressed in the full regalia of his office, a towering headdress made of jade, feathers, and carved wood, representing the world tree that connects the earth to the heavens. For decades after their rediscovery, the silent cities of the Maya kept their deepest secrets. The intricate carvings that covered their monuments and temples were a profound puzzle. Scholars saw them not as a language, but as a mysterious collection of symbolic pictures and decorations. The true story of the Maya, it was believed, was lost forever. But they were wrong. Hidden within those beautiful, complex carvings was the only true writing system ever developed in the ancient Americas. A voice that, once understood, would allow the silent cities to finally tell their own history. Unlike a simple alphabet, the Maya script was a sophisticated and beautiful logosyllabic system. This means that some of its glyphs, or symbols, represent whole words, while others represent phonetic syllables. A scribe could write the same word in multiple ways, either with a single, intricate picture glyph or by spelling it out syllable by syllable. These glyphs were artfully arranged into square blocks, and their texts were written in paired columns, read from left to right and top to bottom in a zigzag pattern. For centuries, this complexity made the script seem impenetrable, a work of art rather than a language. The key to their writing, and indeed their entire worldview, was their advanced system of mathematics. The Maya developed a vigesimal, or base 20, number system of elegant simplicity. A single dot represented the number 1, a horizontal bar represented 5, and a stylized shell symbol represented a concept that was, for its time, a stroke of pure genius: 0. The independent invention of 0 was a monumental intellectual leap that many other great civilizations, including the Romans, never made. For the Maya, it was an essential tool, allowing them to make calculations that reached into the millions and to track the vast cycles of time with perfect precision. Time, for the Maya, was a sacred obsession. They did not have one calendar, but a series of complex, interlocking systems that governed every aspect of their lives. The first was the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar used for divination and religious ceremony. Running parallel to this was the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar that governed the agricultural seasons. These two calendars worked together like intricate gears, creating a larger 52-year cycle.
To track their history across even vaster spans of time, they created the long count, a linear and stunningly accurate count of the number of days that had passed since a mythical creation date in the year 3114 BC. It is this long count, carved onto their stone monuments, that allows archaeologists today to date the reigns of their kings and the history of their cities with an accuracy unparalleled in the ancient world. This mastery of mathematics and timekeeping was driven by a profound and patient observation of the cosmos. Maya priest astronomers from observatories built atop their pyramids tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets with incredible accuracy. They could predict solar and lunar eclipses, events they saw as powerful and often dangerous omens. They were particularly obsessed with the cycles of Venus, which they associated with warfare and sacred ritual. The glyphs, the mathematics, the calendars, and the astronomy were all part of a single unified quest to understand the divine order of the universe. The Maya saw the cosmos not as a place of chaos, but a vast, intricate, and predictable machine governed by the repeating cycles of time. Their great intellectual mission was to decipher the workings of this machine and to align their society with its sacred rhythms through precise rituals and meticulous record-keeping. The universe, to them, was a text written in the language of the stars, and they were its devoted and brilliant readers. But this was the peak before a long and mysterious fall. The first sign that something was going profoundly wrong is written in stone, or rather in the sudden absence of writing. For centuries, the Maya kings had obsessively chronicled their reigns, dedicating magnificent stone stelae, tall carved monuments, to mark important dates and victories. Thanks to their precise long-count calendar, we can track this history with incredible accuracy, and it is this very accuracy that allows us to see the unraveling as it happened. Starting in the late 8th century, one by one, the cities began to fall silent. At Palenque, the last dated monument is from 799 AD. At Copan, it is 822 AD. The last great monument at the superpower city of Tikal is dated to 869 AD. After these dates, the tradition that had defined their civilization for centuries simply stops. The kings were no longer commissioning these public declarations of their power. This sudden silence in the archaeological record is a stark and chilling testament to a system in crisis. The public voice of the divine kings was being extinguished. Further evidence of this societal breakdown was found in the very hearts of the cities. Archaeologists have uncovered massive construction projects, new temples, expansions to palaces, grand ceremonial causeways that were left mysteriously unfinished. It is a ghostly sight, vast plazas only half paved, intricately carved stone blocks left abandoned in the quarries or along the roadways, as if the stonemasons and laborers simply put down their tools one day and walked away. The engine of Maya civilization was grinding to a halt.
In these final, desperate years, the very character of the cities began to change. At some sites, we see evidence of hastily built, crude fortifications being thrown up around the central palaces and temples, a stark contrast to the open, confident design of the classic period. This was a world that was suddenly living in fear. At the same time, the quality of elite goods, from painted pottery to carved jade, shows a marked decline. The sophisticated trade networks that had connected the Maya world were breaking down. Cities that had once been centers of art and learning were becoming isolated, impoverished, desperate. But what was causing this collapse? To answer that question, we must turn to the Earth itself. In the 1990s, a team of scientists began drilling deep into the bottom of Lake Chicanacán in the Yucatan Peninsula. They were searching for answers in an unlikely place: mud. Layer by layer, they extracted a core sample that went back thousands of years, a frozen record of the region's climate history preserved in the sediment at the bottom of the lake. What they found was startling. The chemical composition of the sediment revealed periods when the lake had dramatically shrunk, when evaporation far exceeded rainfall, when the water became increasingly salty and stagnant. These were droughts, and the timing was unmistakable. The most severe droughts in the sediment record occurred between 760 and 910 AD, precisely during the collapse of the classic Maya. Further studies from cave formations, tree rings, and other lake cores across Central America confirmed the pattern. The Maya collapse coincided with a series of devastating, multi-decade droughts, the worst the region had experienced in thousands of years. Imagine what this meant for the Maya. Their entire civilization was built on the delicate balance of the rainy season, the annual monsoons that filled the reservoirs, watered the cornfields, and sustained life in a challenging tropical environment. But now the rains were failing. Not every year, but more often, and when they did come, they were weak, unpredictable. The reservoirs began to run dry, the cornfields withered. At first, the people would have turned to their kings. Perform the rituals, they would have said. Offer more blood to the gods. Bring back the rains. And the kings, desperate to maintain their authority, would have complied. They increased the frequency and intensity of their bloodletting ceremonies. They commissioned more monuments. They waged more wars to capture prisoners for sacrifice. But the rains did not come. Year after year, the drought persisted. The stored corn ran out. Famine set in. People began to starve. And slowly, a terrible realization must have dawned. The king could not control the weather. The divine bargain was broken. The very foundation of Maya political and religious authority was crumbling. If the king was not truly divine, if his bloodletting could not bring the rains, then what was the point of the tributes, the labor, the obedience? The social contract that had held Maya society together for centuries was falling apart. But the drought alone does not explain the totality of the collapse, because here is the tragic irony. The Maya made the drought worse. For 600 years, the population of the Maya lowlands had been growing. More people meant more mouths to feed, which meant more land had to be cleared for agriculture. The Maya used a technique called slash-and-burn farming. They would cut down sections of jungle, burn the vegetation, and plant their crops in the ash-enriched soil. This technique works for a while, but the soil in the rainforest is thin and fragile. After a few growing seasons, the nutrients are exhausted and the farmers must move on, clearing new sections of jungle. At first, this was sustainable, but as the population grew, the pace of deforestation accelerated. By the height of the Classic period, vast stretches of the Maya lowlands had been stripped of their original forest cover, replaced with cornfields and secondary growth. And this had consequences. Without the forest canopy to trap moisture and regulate temperature, the local climate became hotter and drier. Rainfall decreased, the soil eroded, washing into the rivers and silting up the reservoirs. The very landscape was changing. The Maya were, quite literally, destroying the environmental foundation of their civilization. When the droughts came, they hit a landscape that was already fragile, already stressed. A healthy rainforest can withstand a dry spell. Its deep root systems hold the soil. Its canopy retains moisture. But the degraded landscape of the late Classic Maya could not. The droughts became catastrophic. There is evidence, too, of warfare intensifying during this period. As resources became scarce, the city-states turned on each other. Raids that had once been ritualized affairs, fought for prestige and captives, became desperate struggles for survival, for control of dwindling water sources, for the remaining productive farmland. The archaeological record shows burned villages, massacred populations, fortifications hastily erected and then overrun.
And so, the people
world
left,
of the Classic Maya
not all at
was
once,
tearing
but
itself
gradually,
apart.
family by family, village by village. Where did they go? Some moved north to the Yucatan Peninsula, where there were cenotes, natural sinkholes that provided access to fresh water even in times of drought. Others moved to the highlands, to regions with more reliable rainfall. Some, no doubt, simply wandered, becoming refugees in a collapsing world. By the year 950 AD, the great cities of the southern Maya lowlands were virtually empty. Tikal, Palenque, Copan, Calakmul, the plazas that had once held thousands were silent. The temples were empty, the palaces were abandoned, and the jungle began to reclaim them. Vines crept up the sides of the pyramids, tree roots pried apart the carefully fitted stones, birds nested in the empty palaces. The carvings, the glyphs, the records of kings and dynasties slowly disappeared beneath a blanket of green. The cities became silent, and they would remain silent for nearly 1,000 years. The story of the Maya collapse is not a simple tale of a single catastrophe. It is a complex interplay of environmental stress, political fragility, and the unintended consequences of human action. It is a reminder that even the most sophisticated civilizations are vulnerable, that the balance between humanity and the environment is delicate, and that when that balance is disrupted, the consequences can be catastrophic. But it is also important to remember that the Maya did not disappear. Their descendants still live in Central America today. Millions of people who speak Maya languages, who preserve Maya traditions, who carry forward the legacy of their ancestors. The cities may have fallen, but the people endured. The great temples still stand in the jungle, weathered by centuries of rain and heat, but still magnificent in their decay. When you walk through the ruins of Tikal today, when you climb the steep stone steps to the top of Temple 4 and look out over the endless green canopy of the Patan rainforest, you can still feel the weight of history. You can imagine the city as it once was, the plazas filled with people, the smell of copal incense rising from the temples, the sound of drums and conch shell trumpets echoing across the valley. You can imagine the king at the top of the pyramid offering his sacred bloodletting ritual, offering his blood to the gods in exchange for rain, for life, for the survival of his people. And you can understand the tragedy of what happened here. Not a sudden apocalypse, but a slow unraveling. A civilization that had reached such heights, that had achieved such intellectual and artistic brilliance, brought down not by invaders or plague, but by the very success that had made it great. The population growth that had filled the cities also stripped the forests. The political system that had united the people also locked them into a fragile dependence on a divine king whose power rested on a promise he could not keep. The intensive agriculture that had fed millions also exhausted the soil and made the land vulnerable to drought. In the end, the Maya collapse teaches us a lesson that is more relevant today than ever before, that human societies are not separate from the natural environment, that our actions have consequences that may not be felt for generations, but when they come with devastating force, that the choices we make today about how we use our resources, how we treat our environment, how we organize our societies, will determine not just our own fate, but the fate of those who come after us. The Maya knew this in their own way. Their entire worldview was built on the idea of balance, of reciprocity between humans and the cosmos. The people feed the king feeds the gods send the rain grows the corn feeds the people. It was a circle, a cycle, a system that depended on every part functioning correctly. When one part failed, when the rains stopped coming despite the king's rituals, the entire system collapsed. And so, as you drift off to sleep tonight, think of those silent cities. Think of the pyramids rising above the jungle canopy. Think of the kings who once stood atop them, offering their blood to the gods. Think of the farmers in the cornfields, the scribes carving glyphs, the astronomers tracking the stars. Think of the lesson they left behind, carved not just in stone, but in the very earth itself, that civilizations, no matter how grand, are not eternal, that the forces of nature are powerful and indifferent, and that our survival depends on living in harmony with the world around us. The Maya cities sleep now beneath the jungle, but their story lives on, a whisper from the past, a warning for the future. Rest now. The story of the Maya is complete. The jungle breathes, the stones remember, and history, as always, waits patiently to teach us, if only we are willing to listen. Good night.